All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Don Pizzette, and we are continuing on with CompTIA IT Fundamentals. In our last episode, we were talking about peripheral devices. Now we can add on additional functionality to our computer. Well, we are adding on additional content to that episode because we didn't get through everything that we wanted to do. So back in the studio with us is Mr. Ronnie Wong, who's going to help us continue our adventure of adding more cables to our desk, right, Ronnie?
Wouldn't that, that is absolutely the truth. We end up with that cable nest of things that we have on our desk here. But peripheral devices are important, like what we've mentioned in the previous episode here. They enhance the way that we do computing. And anybody that's going to be supporting this hardware, they should be at least familiar with the devices that we've talked about, because those are the most common devices that we'll end up running into. So in terms of the connection, you did see where they're fairly easy to do so. And everything else that we've showed you, it worked right out of the box, which is just about almost every device today, which is really nice. Now, we want to, in this episode, continue to talk about some of the additional devices that we can also add in and their configurations as well. So Don, here it is. I have my MacBook and everything seems to be going well. And one day I get this unusual message that says low on hard drive space. Okay. Now, Don, there's a problem with the MacBook that I finally figured out at one point in time, which is says, hey, you don't get to buy a new, larger hard drive and just stick in there. So Don, I was kind of in trouble at that point.
Yeah, and in the olden days, this is even just a couple of years ago, you used to be able to upgrade your hardware pretty easily. So if your hard drive was running out of space, you just go out and buy a bigger one, you pop it in there, and now you got a bigger system, a bigger drive. But there's two challenges to that. The first challenge is what Ronnie's saying, is a lot of manufacturers now are making it where you can't upgrade your storage, which is annoying. The second thing is, even if you can upgrade your storage, it's a little harder than what most people are used to, because you've got to transfer all your old data from your old drive to your new drive. And this is probably the single ticket that keeps things like the Best Buy Geek Squad in business, is that it's hard for people to move data from one drive to another, even from one computer to another, so they get another service to come and do it for them. But we don't necessarily need to replace the drive that's in our computer. The reality is a lot of the data we have, we don't need every single day. So external storage, external hard drives are becoming a really, really popular add-on, maybe for backups, maybe for storing data or moving data or whatever. That external storage has become so inexpensive these days that that's really the best option when you want to add additional space to your system. So Ronnie, do you have an example of that for us?
I do. When we start to take a look, the key here, right, is when you do so, you want to find one that, of course, has, well, that connection once again, which is that USB connection. And most of the external devices are fairly portable. They're not, I remember like the first one that I ever saw was actually an internal hard drive that was inside of a case. It was huge. It was a little bit smaller than the size of a shoebox, Don. And then you had to bring in an external power supply and add into that as well. And all of a sudden, you weren't just carrying around a device like this, which I could fit into my pocket and carry it if I needed to, or into my book bag and carry it. I had to carry a whole separate bag if I wanted to be able to do so. But most of them today are something like this, where it's kind of a wallet-sized or huge wallet-sized type of drive. And you see the dimensions aren't very large here. But they will fit a kind of a nice drive, and then they'll have a port and, of course, a cable that comes along with it. And all we have to do now is just simply plug it in, and this will give us whatever the capacity of this device actually is going to be, and that's the key.
Ronnie, that one looks pretty small. What type of capacity are we talking about?
This capacity here is actually a 2 terabyte drive, and if you're kind of like 2 terabytes, what does that actually mean? Remember that when we start talking about the size of drives here, it's about numbers, right? So we actually talk about 1,000 billion bytes is what we're talking about. So it's 2,000 billion bytes. You're not sure what that is. It's a large number.
Well, let's put it in perspective of your laptop, right? So how much storage do you actually have in your laptop?
In my laptop, I believe there's 512 gigabytes. So this is 4 times?
About four times the size?
As large as what's actually in my laptop right now.
And that drive probably costs, what, like $100 or something?
It was probably right about $90, I think, is what it actually ended up costing.
So hopefully you see out there that it's a really low-cost option to be able to add tons of storage. I mean, 4 times the storage in his laptop. That's way easier than trying to upgrade. And the reality is, in the case of Ronnie's laptop, you can't upgrade it. He has 500 gigs of storage in it, and that's that. That's what you get. So this type of option is becoming far more popular. Now, the hard drive that's already in my laptop, Ronnie, when I turn it on, it sees that obviously my computer boots up, it's working. If we add additional storage, you said it just pops up and it's there?
It pops up, but it shows up as another additional hard drive for me. So let me show you what I'm talking about here on my computer screen. I'm simply going to plug my USB device in, or at least I think I'm going to plug it in.
And I can see the icon in the top right corner that is showing your existing hard drive.
Yep.
And so you just plugged in your new one.
I just plugged in the new one, and in just a moment, it should actually end up appearing where you'll see 2 additional drives, and you'll see one popped up right here. Let me see if I can zoom in. And another one just popped up right there. Now, Don, most people watching, like, you just plugged in 1 drive. How did 2 hard drives end up popping up here? Well, I can take that now new storage, that one big block, and I can subdivide it up and say, hey, I want to treat this as 2 different drives if I wanted to. And I did this on purpose because something that Don had mentioned, the idea of backing up my computer. So I took one of those and I made a 1 terabyte drive, a partition here that separated out and said, hey, let's make this for backup. And on the other side, this is what I also use for storage. So it allows me to be able to do that. And now I can access both of these devices or both of these partitions here. And it just looks exactly like what we talked about. And now it actually appears as 3 different drives, and I can access them. And in the background, this time machine is probably running right now for all that I know. Since I just plugged in, it's probably doing a backup right now as it's taking its time to do so. So it allows me to be able to do that, and now I have that device, and at the end of the day, I can unplug it, I can take it home, and I can plug it back in if I need access to this additional storage as well. So it really is the best benefits that I can have.
Now, we do need to be a little bit more careful with storage than other devices, right? If it's a mouse or a keyboard or a camera like we did in the last episode, we can just unplug those and it's no big deal, right? But if I just reach over and unplug that hard drive, I could potentially lose some data, couldn't I?
You can, and that's because inside of at least this drive right here, okay, it's got spinning disks in it. And if I'm in the middle of writing information to that disk and I just simply yank the power out, it could be in the middle of writing something to the hard drive, and whatever it didn't get right, it now loses. And so you end up losing data potentially in that way. So if you're going to use storage drives externally, you always want to make sure that you also eject the drive too. And that makes the system to wait until it stops. And you can see I right-clicked on this drive, and it says eject my passport. I can simply do that, and now it says, hey, are you sure? Do you want to eject? I'm going to eject them both, because it's actually one drive attached. It says, hey, let me go and do that. And once it disappears, now it's not writing to the drive anymore, and that means I can now safely unplug this device and take it with me. If I don't, I do have the potential of losing any data that's being transferred right during that point in time.
Yep, and he just showed you on a Mac, but it's the same thing on Windows. It actually has the same eject label. It's a little bit different on Linux, where they call it unmounting the disk, but it's the same idea. In fact, in the background, all 3 of them are mounting and unmounting, but the eject terminology is known by more people, so you don't really see that. But you definitely want to make sure you safely eject that hardware. Again, if it's a webcam or a mouse or a keyboard, you can just pull those. There's no eject needed for that. But for storage, that's definitely something you want to be aware of. You don't want to lose data, especially when you've got a drive that's designed to be your backup. Yeah. You don't want to damage your backup. That would be really bad. All right, now, you did that whole example there, Ronnie. You plugged in the drive, you saw your data, you ejected the drive, and you never added any software.
Right.
We kind of talked about this in the last episode, that a lot of hardware out there just works. It's plug and play. You plug it in, and then the device is ready to play. It's ready to do its job. But not every device is like that. So let's talk about those scenarios where hardware either isn't functional or isn't fully functional the moment we plug it in.
Right. Sometimes you'll end up with these devices that will need what we call additional drivers to work. So if they're working, they may work in the most basic sense of them working. But if they don't, you may have to go, hey, I know that it's actually there. So what am I going to do to get the operating system to recognize this? You're going to have to go out to the manufacturer of that device and download what we call a driver. A driver is that software that allows for your operating system on your computer to talk to the hardware to say, hey, here's the functionalities that the operating system can access and can be able to use. So in this instance here, in the previous episode, I went ahead and I installed or actually plugged in a webcam, and it's actually this webcam right here that I plugged in, and I didn't add anything else to it. But it is working. So let me show you what I'm talking about too. So I wanted to make sure that, let's see if I bring this up here. So here it is. Here's my public Facebook page that I have available. So Don, let's say that I plug in my webcam and now we're ready to stream live. I can simply go to the live video, And now you can see, there it is. There's the angle of this webcam. And Don, everything looks perfect. And you can see, oh, there it is. Don's on social media now.
We can see your cable nest down there that we were talking about.
You can see the actual cable nest. That is kind of embarrassing, but it is true. Okay, so we can actually see this working, and you can see actually your own camera there. But when I see that, it's like, hey, everything works. I don't really need an additional driver. So it can work, but is there a possibility that there's more functionality or enhancement that I can have with this camera? So that's what we want to do. I'm going to not go live here.
Yeah, and you know, looking at your camera there, right? The picture, maybe it wasn't as sharp as we wanted it, or it wasn't white balanced right. I mean, we've got studio lighting, so things usually look pretty good in here. But if you're in your office, you might have a window that's allowing sunlight in, and so everything's washed out.
Right.
You've probably seen this before, where you're watching a web conference and somebody looks like Casper the Ghost, like you can barely see facial features; they're so whited out. Well, we might want to tweak and tune that. Can you do that when you just plug the camera in and it works?
No. Yeah, you really can't, because sometimes you don't have the software interface to help you to tweak it, okay? You don't have the controls, or your operating system is just not going to talk to those features. So I simply went to the Logitech website, and now I'm going to search for that, oops, let me see if I can get away from all these pop-ups that's happening here. I went to the support page. I'm going to search for my product here, which is going to be a webcam. From here, webcam. And I like this page because it is easy to find. You just simply find the camera picture that looks very similar to yours, if not the exact one. And I believe that this is the one that I want, which is right here. So I click on that picture, and now I have the support. If I scroll to the downloads, it's here. I can take a look, and it will normally show you which operating system that you're on. It's able to detect what page that you're on, so I can choose whichever the operating system is, and that's important that you choose the right one. If you're running a Windows, you'll scroll down here to the bottom, and of course you can access the Windows ones as well. But I'm on a Mac, so let me choose the Mac. And on this one, this one's got a weird name, Don. Okay, it says Logitech Gaming Software. That doesn't sound like the term driver at all. So you might be wondering, like, is this the right one or not? And it doesn't seem like it. You read it and go, let's customize gaming mice, keyboards, and select wheels. But if I scroll down to the bottom, it's right here, Don. It says improved the UI, the user interface for the 920, 922 cameras to be more consistent with other supported cameras. So if there was some additional functionality and feature that I wasn't getting, this is the download or the software that I need to download to give me that enhancement that I need. But if I just wanted just the basic camera functionality to do what it's doing, I don't have to install it. But if you realize that you're missing, you know, something that you really want, and you bought that camera for that specific purpose, and it's like, I don't see this feature, make sure you go and download that particular driver and install it. Sometimes the driver may require you to reboot the computer. Okay, it's not always guaranteed. But if it does, reboot the computer, bring it back up, you'll probably see that the software installed, and now you'll have the full feature or functionality that you want to have access to. In Windows systems, they'll tell you whether or not they want you to reboot or not. But some of them, you know, it usually does it. Like mine, on my MacBook, if I install something that says it requires a reboot for it to be set up properly, then you know. So just kind of realize that you'll have to follow whatever instructions follow after that, and then you should have that feature that you want to be able to access and get ready to go. And you'll see that on some of these devices. So everyone that you have in that sense, make sure you take a look and see whether or not you need that driver to make it work the way you want to.
All right, now we've taken a look at several different types of devices here, all that were one way or another directly plugged into your laptop, right? You plugged in a hard drive, you plugged in a camera. We talked about USB, Thunderbolt, FireWire. But did we talk about FireWire? That's old.
Yeah, it's old. Yeah,
FireWire, right? FireWire was an older technology that was used for cameras and storage. If you have like an older Mac, you probably have and when I mean old, like a 10-year-old Mac,
easily.
You might have a FireWire port. Not very common. We talked a bit about RF and Bluetooth, so wireless now, but with RF we still had to have a dongle, so there's still something being plugged in. With Bluetooth you had to have a receiver. But there's one type of device that we haven't talked about yet that doesn't normally require a dongle of any sort or really any additional hardware in your system, and that's network-enabled hardware. Hardware that's available through some kind of shared networking that you usually already have in place, and you're able to access that hardware that way. So do you have an example of that you could show the viewers?
Yeah, probably the big example, especially in a work environment that you're going to see here, is going to be what we call a network-based printer. And that means the printer is not directly attached to one computer, and then you're sending your print job to that one computer, and then that computer is actually printing it out for you. But what we're actually doing is we're saying this device by itself is going to be the printer itself that we send device or our print jobs to, and it will handle it for us as well. Now, in that sense, I'm not plugging in a dongle. I'm not plugging a cable directly in so I access the printer. I am now using the networking language, the networking protocols that are out there to allow me to send the information across the network to that computer. So let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. So right here on IT Pro TV's network, we have that same feature. If I go to my Apple menu and then System Preferences, okay, right here on my printers and scanner, well, I can see that I have this IT Pro TV Office BW, which is black, white. Oh, there it is. I was about to try and expand that out. BW HP LaserJet M506 printer. Okay, so this is directly attached to one of the network cables, and it sits there. It has an address on it, but because it's actually on there and we were able to find it, my computer was able to detect it and say, hey, is this the printer that you want to add in? And it allowed me to add it in. And on this point, though, if this printer required me to have a driver, I would directly talk to it and it would tell me either to go and get the driver or to download it directly from that device and install it and make it work as well.
And that's a real kind of genius here of network devices. Like, it makes things so easy that Ronnie, in fact, Ronnie, if you hit your little plus sign there, his laptop will just scan the network and look for more printers. So they already found two just right there in the drop down. So like Tim's color printer over in Tim's office, he could add that one in. And a lot of vendors like Apple and Microsoft and most of the Linux distros that are out there will automatically try and get the right driver for the hardware. They might even already have the right driver on the system in place. And Windows is like that a lot of times. Apple does that with HP, with other vendors not so much. So it just depends on your operating system. But you might find that you can connect, and again, you don't have to worry about a driver. There is a driver, but you don't have to worry about it. The system's already figured it out, and it's talking via the network. Now, when I have a device right here, like if I have the printer sitting on my desk, I can push some buttons on it, right? I can tell it what size paper is in the first tray versus the second tray. Well, when you're managing it this way, when you're connecting over the network, the printer is not in the same room, or whatever the network hardware is not in the same room as you. So when we need to configure that hardware, does that mean we're having to get up and walk all the way over there? Because that'd be pretty annoying, wouldn't it?
It would be annoying. Can you do it? Yes. Okay, but normally we don't. Since it's on the network, it's a device that's registered there, we can also simply go to the management interface of that device, and we can do that from across the network as well. So I know the IP address of my printer, and when I typed it in, I had to go to its web page, and that brings me directly up to this printer here, the HP LaserJet 506, and it's from inside of here, I can see, well, all of that other information, such as what Don was talking about. We can see something like the fact is, oh, look, tray number 2, it has paper in it, okay, and tray number 1 is empty. I can even see that the ink, not ink cartridge, I guess it's toner cartridge here. I always look for ink cartridge because I'm at home at times when I'm printing. And it shows it's about 20% here is an estimate, but you can kind of see whether or not you actually, have to worry about replacing any of the other additional stuff that we were actually seeing there. I can see also, of course, logging information that's actually out there, and of course the configuration. And this is where you'll actually end up seeing, of course, additional options that are also available, a little bit small, so I can zoom in and see some of the other things that are available to us. All these are things that we can be able to get access to if I have the administrative privileges to do so. And that's another nice feature, is that it's locked down. I'm not really even logged in. You can see where it's signed in. So it allows me to see some of the stuff. It doesn't allow me to change it, which is probably a better thing.
And we're starting to see more and more devices configured this way. Ronnie's showing a printer, which is probably the most common, but webcams,
right?
Thermostats, security devices, routers,
right?
Switches. A lot of them are moving to a web-based interface for configuration. So you don't have to get up and go to wherever the webcam is, because you might have several of them around your building, that your computer can connect via the network. the assumption is that almost every computer is connected to the internet these days. So if you're already connected to a network, why not use that to communicate instead of having to plug in cables to a device that you're not even really making use of? So that's an interesting thing that we're starting to see in a lot of devices. That'll become more and more common as time goes on. Also because more and more manufacturers are reducing the amount of ports on your computer. You're always going to have a network adapter, right? So you know that's available. You don't know, is there going to be a USB-C port? Is there going to be a Thunderbolt port? Will there be, hey, FireWire? Maybe I love FireWire, but nobody puts a FireWire port on a computer anymore. So that goes away. But network will always work.
Right.
And in Ronnie's example, we didn't point it out here, but it's worth mentioning, that printer that he's connecting to has a physical network cable plugged into it. But Ronnie's laptop, he's on the wireless. So he's on the wireless network communicating over to the wired network to talk to that printer. He can still walk around the building printing to his heart's desire, which I don't know how much that is. I just picture you running around the building, print. So it's like, he's got that capability, he can do it without having to actually go and plug in.
Yeah, the idea of this IP base, we're seeing more and more of, like you said, because it is easier for that one interface, web browser, to be able to manage all these different devices. And in the instance of like what you're talking about, thermostats, I think, are kind of the big one. The home management, home automation, I couldn't remember. All these things, they're becoming more geared towards the home user and not geared towards really like somebody having to technically understand every little nuance that there is. It makes it easier for configuration, but it also means it makes it easier for you if you're choosing to get into this industry as well and you're supporting hardware, because you're now being able to go, okay, I know exactly how to get into this. I can now manage this. I can get access to what I need to. So it really is helpful. All these different peripheral devices that we've been talking about, okay, well, they're just going to become more and more. And since Don has mentioned that the key here is that they're starting to reduce the number of ports, it means you're going to have to learn more and more about these devices and how they're going to connect and be able to work more efficiently, and also how you're going to configure them to help your users do whatever they need to. So just be aware of them and make sure you kind of play around with them, understand the purpose and use of the drivers, and that will help you out too.
All right, Ronnie. Well, I think that is a pretty good rundown of peripheral devices. It is nice to know that most of what we buy today is just going to use USB, so it's pretty much just going to work out of the box. But we have a ton of other options that are out there for us if we have a particular need or scenario that arises. So, all right, that's going to be a wrap for us on peripheral devices. But stay tuned because we do have more CompTIA IT fundamentals coming down the line. We're going to be talking about a lot more hardware. One peripheral device you might have wondered that we didn't talk about were monitors. We've got an episode dedicated just to display hardware, so we're going to tackle that separately. Stay tuned for that one. It's coming up. But for right now, this is a good spot for us to wrap up. So signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm Don Pizzette.
And I'm Ronnie Wong.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.